them jokes for you tonight, but maybe we can make up for that later. Um, so, the TNT program tonight will be on logging with Doug Reese, AK4AO. So, without any further ado, let me turn it over to Doug. That looks good.
Like so. Okay, how's this? Everyone can hear? All right, let's begin the story of logging for tonight with a flashback. So let's go back to 1962 when I was first licensed, and we'll do the logging story for 1962. Well, you either bought or you made a notebook, and it had columns for date, time, frequency, call sign, and so on. And you wrote everything down because that was an FCC requirement, and that's the story. And we'd be ready for refreshments. Well, the world has changed a lot since 1962. Now, let me give you a scenario that you could implement today if you wanted to. So you've sat in front of the TV and you're watching the news, right? And you get an email from your computer saying that a station that you need for the award that you're working on has been spotted. Okay, we'll pause here. We might have some new people who don't know what that means. Spotting in amateur radio means that you are connected to a website to which people report contacts with a station of interest in order to enable others to make a contact with that station. So that's spotting. All right, so somebody else has spotted a station that you need. Your software on your computer has bounced that against your log, determined that this is something that you need for your next award, and emailed you. All right, so you go up to your shack and you go up to your computer and you click on the spot and it tunes your rig to the station, puts it in the right mode, and off you go. Okay, so if you look at some of the suites of logging software, they do an awful lot more than 1962 logging. All right. Well, let me jump in and ask, first of all, why would you keep a log since it's no longer a requirement? And in fact, for some folks, the answer is don't bother. You know, you have a 2-meter rig in your car and you use it to talk to your friends on the repeater. I'd rather you didn't keep a log. I'd rather you did your driving, right? But if you're into contesting, the way that you enter a contest is to submit a log of your contacts. So that's one use. Okay, another word that may be unfamiliar to new folks, it says to keep track of QSL requests and receipts. Well, what's a QSL? A QSL is a confirmation of an amateur radio contact, and it can take two forms. The 1962 answer is a card that's about 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches and either sent as a postcard or in an envelope that has the details of the contact, and it's from the station you contacted, and it's your proof for award purposes or for hanging on your wall that you in fact made that amateur radio contact. Today there are also electronic means of confirming radio contacts that are much more convenient if your goal is to pursue awards. And that's next. Awards. Well, there are lots and lots of awards, and we'll talk about that at some other presentation. But some of the ones that we talk about the most are for working all of the states in the United States and for working, well, we say 100 countries, but they're not really countries. There's an official list of entities. And somebody has made a judgment for example, to split Russia into European Russia and Asiatic Russia, so it can count actually more than 2 times, because Kaliningrad, which is a little discontinuous piece of Russia, also counts. In the U.S., the continental U.S. counts, Alaska separate, Hawaii is separate, and so on. But anyway, if you want to get awards for working all the states or 100 countries or whatever, you need proof that you've made those contacts. And your log is on the route to getting that proof. And some people just keep a log because they make friends on the air and they want a record so that when they hear that call sign again, they know his name and a little something about him to get on and chat. So that's a few reasons why you might want to keep a log. The challenge today, though, is there are an abundance of solutions. I looked on eham.net and there were over 100 reviews of logging software, and there are multiple websites that come into the picture, and you probably can't get away with just putting in one thing and being done and having it cover everything. So your solution probably will become a systems integration task, and by the way, that may be the hardest part of getting going, is to do that. Now, I didn't evaluate anything like 100 logging software products. What I'm going to do is tell you what I did, and a little later on I'll ask a little bit about what you guys did and give you a feel for what kind of solution you might come up with. And as my station is able to do just about everything, you know, contesting, casual operating, award chasing, and so on, I have probably most or all of the components that you would need. But it's a little bit of a complicated picture. So I'm going to walk you through this picture, and we're going to talk about the various pieces that I use. And I'm going to start down here in this thing that says Consolidated Log, where I use DXKeeper. There are other good choices. So whenever I make a contact that I want to log, it's going to end up in DXKeeper. Now, it may go directly in, or it may come through some other route. In particular, if it came through a contest, I would suggest that if you're into contesting or want to get into contesting, you also get into a contest logger. Because in the context of contesting, a contest logger is really going to give you a great leg up. We'll talk some more about that. I've also been working a lot of FT8, and I have this set up so that when I work a station with the WSJTX software that decodes it, when it's done with the QSO, it'll pop up a dialog box to let me log the contact. That button pushes it into my DXKeeper log, which automatically sends it to ARRL Logbook of the World and EQSL.cc. Now, let me tell you what those are. So, if you want to potentially use your contacts for awards, or if you want to give the stations you work the opportunity to use those contacts for awards, the ARRL Logbook of the World really facilitates that. Now, the one thing to watch out for is please don't confuse it with a logbook, because it's not your logbook. It will never be your logbook. It is a QSLing system. And that's the beginning and end of the story for the Logbook of the World. The Logbook of the World is free for you to enter your contacts, but the way they pay for it is if you want to use those contacts for awards, you have to pay them for the contacts that you're going to use. All right, but that's probably a pretty good system, because it means, you know, all of those DXpeditions and DX stations and so on that don't care anything about awards or your QSL cards can put it in the Logbook of the World for free and do you a favor. EQSL is another online QSLing system. It's a little bit different from Logbook of the World, but it's not usable for ARRL awards. So Logbook of the World, in my experience, has a bigger market share of interest among hams. Also, if you want to get into FT8 for DXing, I would suggest you get on the Logbook of the World whether you need it or not. Here's why. All right. This other piece of software called JT Alert takes all the decodes from a given time period, looks at them. It can determine whether there's anybody you need for an award. It reports all of the contacts. It turns them a different color if you need them for an award. And it tells you whether that contact is registered with Logbook of the World and EQSL.cc.
WSJTX suite?
No, JT Alert is not part of WSJTX. It's a separate download. And if you would like, I can post the links for all of these things. Okay. Let's see. Back to DXKeeper and my consolidated log. So it has all of these arrows. QRZ is a site that gives information about ham radio stations, including their address. I would caution you to be a little careful with QRZ.com. DXKeeper has a button that says CBA for call book address, and if you press the button, it can go here and get the address that's in QRZ. The problem with that is that some hams will put their address up at the top where it's going to pull from, and then you read the text in their biography, and it says, don't send any QSL cards there, use my QSL manager over here. All right, so you need to go to the QRZ page and actually look at it before you believe anything that comes automatically. The other DXLab components, which this can interface to, and I don't use them a lot right now, I'll talk about later, but they enable some of those scenarios like I was talking about. Now, I don't actually do all of that. I don't have it email me, but I actually had that up for a while, and I just got tired of getting too many emails and getting my day interrupted by my computer. So I dialed that back so that I turn on the radio when I want to turn on the radio, and for me that's worked out just fine. Okay, DXKeeper will tell me how I'm doing on award progress, and when I'm ready to apply for an ARRL award, there's paperwork, and there's multiple ways to apply for ARRL, but the best one involves you send an electronic copy of a list of the QSL cards that you're going to submit to be checked to Terry Hines back there. Wave Terry. There's the man who checks them for us. You send an electronic list to ARRL. You give the paper list to Terry. He looks at the cards. He signs the paper, sends it to ARRL. They push the button saying all is good, and it really facilitates that process. And DXKeeper can keep track of your cards that you're going to need to have checked to get to the award, and tell you which ones are the right ones. Let's see, let me say a little bit about it, a little bit more. I've told you these things. The other thing I want to do is take a little bit of a pause right now and say that it doesn't have to be DXKeeper. There are lots of other good projects. So let's just run a little quick pool. Anybody here using DXKeeper besides me? Okay, a couple. How about AC Log? Anybody on that? Okay, nobody. Log for OM. Here's one. I know Mike Danart posted that he was using that. Ham Radio Deluxe. Anybody there? Okay, a couple there. Ham Radio Deluxe is a fee product, but there's also a free version that you can get. And I imagine that everybody here is happy with their logging solution. So you're likely to do well if you start looking at any of these. What else is out there? Anybody using another one? DX for Win, okay. Anything else? Paper log, okay. You're the second person I've talked to this month using a paper log, so. Okay, Run Log for Mac. A few others, yeah.
Editor Joe just typed the information in.
Okay.
Because I know that one well enough so that I don't really have to look at what I'm doing.
Okay. Another one?
I think it's N3FJP.
N3FJP. Okay. I spoke to someone earlier in the month who is just using his contest logger, and that's the only online logger he uses, and that could be fine except for one scenario that I would struggle with is I get in a contest and I get the log all done, submit it, it's fine, I tuck it away, and now 2 years later the ARRL QSL Bureau sends me a fat envelope, and there are a bunch of cards that say please QSL on them, all right, from 2-3 years back. And I'd like to know, did I already send that fellow a QSL card or not? Well, if your only log is not consolidated, then you have to go back and find it and load it back into N1MM or whatever, and so on. So I like to get all of my contacts consolidated for that reason. Okay, let's see, we've talked about that. Here is the main screen from DXKeeper, and I'm just going to give you a very quick run through so I don't run us out of time here. But up at the top is the standard stuff that would have gone in your paper log, date, time, frequency, and so on. This area here is for paper QSLs saying how you sent it, when you sent it, did you send it via the Bureau, and so on. You can record the address to which you sent it, and things of that sort. It is also where you record it if you go online and ask for a QSL via something called OQRS, which is Online QSL Request System. And there's more than one of those. A common one that DXpeditions like to use is with ClubLog. And you can go into ClubLog and you go to the log of the station that you want to get the QSL from, and you enter your call sign, and it says, okay, looks like you had contacts on 15, 17, and 30 meters. And then you can push a button that says request QSL card. And then it asks you to confirm the date and time of the contacts. And if that matches, then it lets it go through and it takes you to PayPal, and you pay him whatever he wants to get you a QSL card, and whatever you want to contribute to his DXpedition. So you pay that, and that's it. And on his end, he gets what he needs to print a label to put on your QSL card and get it to you. So that's a very efficient way to do that. And this area of the screen here is also where I record that. There's something here called a QSL number, and that is if you have, labeled boxes or something to keep track of your paper card, you can put in whatever identifier you're going to use when you want to find the card again. Here's online QSLs, here's EQSL status, and here's Logbook of the World. At this point on this screen, it's hard for you guys to see in the back, but I have filtered my log for the DXCC of 9G, which is Ghana. So this list is going to be my Ghana contacts, and there's an arrow here pointing to the one that is represented, on the screen. So you can, sort and filter and do all of those database kinds of things, with the log from here. Now let's see, I'm not going to show you the other tabs. I'm just going to tell you what's underneath them in the interest of time. The QSL tab lets you manage your interactions with Logbook of the World, EQSL, and also it helps you out with paper cards. So, for example, a while back we did a special event station and we got a whole pile of QSL cards. I put them into here and let it print the printed labels with the details of the contacts, so we could just glue those on the card and return them. And it will go so far as to actually print the QSL card itself. If you're into inkjet printed QSL cards, you can put in a design and it will take care of that. So it really does a lot for you. Check progress is where you go to find out how you're doing on awards, and it lists all different kinds of awards, and you can pick the one you want, and it'll give you a report showing what you have worked, what you have worked and gotten confirmed. Once it's been confirmed, if you paid ARRL, the fee that I talked about, then it shows a V for verified, and you get all of that information. Let's see what else. I think that's it for that. My QTHs, if you have more than one address from which you work, it lets you manage that. Yeah. But if you have a DX call sign, then you're probably going to, do a separate log for those. And you could have multiple logs. And then these final two tabs are for importing QSOs. That's what I use if I'm contesting. I use N1MM for the contest. I get a log, get it all set, sent off to the contest, and then I import it into DXKeeper from this tab. And if you want to export your QSOs for any reason, you can do that as well. And there are backup functions and so on. So that's just to give you an idea of the kind of features you might find in a log. Yeah, Harry.
Logbook of the World, but I don't understand why people use EQSL and QRZ.com.
Yes, his question is, he uses Logbook of the World. What good is EQSL, and what good is it to upload onto QRZ.com, which are other sites? Okay, for EQSL, a couple of things. EQSL lets you exchange QSL card images that you can print, and also EQSL is kind of a different operating environment from Logbook of the World. Logbook of the World tends to make people gather a bunch of contacts and then do a bulk upload, and EQSL is configured by a lot of folks to QSL in real time, so you get a QSL faster. I don't get a lot of extra benefit out of EQSL myself, but I keep it around anyway because I'm all set up for it, and why not? There are EQSL awards that you can get as well. Now QRZ.com, they would like you to upload your log, and there are QRZ.com awards and so on. I think that that's kind of on the decline, and my evidence for that is you can see a lot of people's QRZ pages where they've exposed their log on their QRZ page, and the last entry you see is 2014, because they got upload fatigue, I think. Okay, just a little bit on contest logging. In a contest, you really want to know what are the implications of working a call sign that you've heard. It might be anything from you've already worked him or you can't work him because of the rules of the contest, to he's a double multiplier, which means that he's worth a whole lot of extra points. So does a good job of keeping you from working dupes, of helping you know that something is extra points, and it can do a whole bunch of things to automate the entry of the information that needs to be exchanged as much as it can be automated. There are just a ton of features in N1MM. At Field Day, we network N1MM, and that allows the possibility that you have a station that's on 80 meters, then another station comes on 80 meters with the same call sign, doesn't want to work the dupes. Well, it can find out through the consolidated, N1MM that it's a dupe. Also, we want to get the log consolidated anyway for submission, so it helps with that. N1MM, as I said, is very capable, but configuring N1MM to do all of its tricks is no small task. All right, there's a lot to it. And one of the things that we could do is have some kind of workshop on N1MM or various other logging solutions. We might even sometime put a couple of products in different corners in the room and let people take a look, have some little demos. There's a lot more we could do program-wise on logging. So let us know what you're interested in, and we'll see what we can do. Let's see, I think I've told you this story. With FT8, I run WSJTX and JT Alert. Now, the way JT Alert works is periodically I tell it to go scan my log, and it updates the table of what I've worked and what I still need to work. And then when I'm running WSJTX and hearing stations, it picks up the decodes and it color codes anything that is still needed for an award. And it can give you an audio alert if you want to turn that on. So you can turn on your rig and go into the next room and do stuff and see if an alert pops up, and then run back into your shack and try to work him. Let's see, I've told you about Logbook of the World. Some stations will QSL only via Logbook of the World, by the way, so that's another, well, there's kind of a stick in that as well as a carrot. And I've told you the rest of these things. We've talked about EQSL, and we've talked about QRZ. The real-time query, which I do, does have a fee associated with it, but it's not a big deal. And I've told you about Club Log and OQRS. Here's the story about the rest of DXLab. I actually run the logger and the launcher. The reason I run the launcher is because when it comes up, it tells me if there's something in my configuration that needs to be updated. For example, if ARRL has changed some of their files and I need to get the latest list of DXCCs or whatever, the launcher has figured that out and has told me, and it'll help me go get those things. Commander is rig control. That's the thing that would enable you to change your frequency mode and so on from your computer, and you could integrate it with spot collector, so you could click on the spots as I described in my potential scenario for this year. Also, DXView would help you point your antenna. Now, my antennas don't move, so I don't get a lot of mileage out of that, but if you have a movable antenna, of course it's important. Pathfinder helps you find addresses for QSLing. Prop View does things like where is the gray line, what parts of the world are light and dark right now, that sort of thing. Spot Collector will let you configure a number of spotting sites. It'll consolidate them into one, and if you want, it will do things like bounce against your log and figure out if there's anybody that you need in the spots. Wind Warbler is a digital mode software, which I don't actually use. I think there's some other leading products in that space. Well, let me tell you how that actually works. The answer is they're individual components, but the way that the DXLab suite works is you download the launcher, all right, and the launcher has a button for each one of these components, all right, and when you want the component, or if you try to do something that requires the component, it will offer to load that for you and install it. So you don't have to do a whole bunch of downloads individually. You do the one download of the launcher, you push the button for DXKeeper, it says, oh, okay, you don't have that installed, do you want it? Oh, all right, I'll take care of it for you. Pretty neat. The reason that I am recommending N1MM for contest logging is that's what the club uses for field day and for NAQP and so on. As I've said, N1MM is a fairly complicated beast, but I figured that if I thought about anything else, then I would have two complicated beasts. And I would have less knowledge to bring to field day and NAQP. So that was my rationale for saying, okay, you know, that's the answer. And as I've said, N1MM works really, really well, does a lot for you, but the learning curve is significant. One of the things I'll mention that you might be interested in for N1MM, and not everybody knows about this, is if you run a digital mode, or if you do something like run a CW decoder, you can run those things inside N1MM. Right, and if you do that, you get a printout that N1MM has looked at between the generation of the display in the digital software or whatever and the time you see it. And it will color all the call signs it finds with colors that indicate whether the station is workable or not and whether it is extra points or not. Also, if you are in a contest and you're using this software inside N1MM, you can click on the exchange information that has to go in the entry screen. It'll just pop up so you don't have to retype it. But to do that, you need to go to the N1MM documentation. You need to read every letter of it and do exactly what it says, or you will be in trouble. But once you've done that, it works just great. Okay, or every letter for the documentation for installing that piece of software. So that would be if you're running FLDigi. WSJTX does interact with N1MM nicely, and there they've kind of hidden away the instructions, but ask me and I'll help you find them. And those you absolutely must read every letter, because they do some things you would never figure out by yourself to make those two play together. But if you read the manual, it works out. Okay, let's see. General purpose logging we've talked about. Yeah, all of those things. Okay. All right, so I've given you my half hour's worth. We may have time for a couple questions in just a moment, but I'd like to propose to continue the discussion online. If you've been noticing on the General Reflector, we now have a club space on hamcommunity.com that's collaborative, so you can set yourself up. It's completely free. You have to get an account if you want to interact with our space. You can look at our space without having to do that. Okay, so everything is open there. I put a couple posts under VWS discussions about logging, a place for you to ask any questions that remain that we don't get to or that occur to you later. And I've also put up a poll to ask what log software you're using, and suggested that folks who think they're, pretty comfortable with package XYZ and would be willing to help anyone else to go ahead and let that be known. And that's a place where you can do that. So how would you go about, sorting your way through this? Well, I've shown you my picture, this one. Figure out what yours is like, all right? And if you have, for example, this link that you want to do, then JT Alert supports 4 logging programs. So if you haven't picked one yet, or you're thinking about changing, that would be a good place to look. Pretty much all of them can do this. You could take a look at anything else that you need to do if you want to do things that, I don't know about in detail, like get your antenna pointed in the right place. Well, look at how the package does that. Look at a couple of them and pick. I wouldn't obsess over this, because I think if you use, any of the leading packages, you'll probably do quite well. And if you do want to change your mind, you can export your log and import it into something else. So, take a look around if you haven't chosen yet. Find something that looks pretty good, climb on and give it a shot. Okay, what questions do you have? Yeah.
You mentioned DXView to aim your antenna. Does that just turn on a switch for your relay, or what does it do?
It tries to figure out the proper heading for your antenna and then get it to go there.
Servo from your rotor?
Now, I haven't used it. I believe it will do all of that. Yeah. Yeah.
It does.
Yes. Okay, confirmation.
And, how is your rig control software integrated in with this?
Well, in my case, I don't do that because I use the rig control software and the Flex radio, but there is a module called Commander, I believe, for rig control, and it does cat control to do the control of your rig. Don.
Curiosity, what operating systems will this work on? Especially the Consolidated Log, DXKeeper, and then N1MM Plus.
I don't know the answer to that offhand, so we'll have to take that one offline, but good question. Yeah.
For the beginner who has no logging software whatsoever and is massively intimidated by the complexity ahead of us, what would you recommend?
Well, I would recommend that you start with something where you have a friend who can help you. Okay, and my start of the solution is, we'll see if anybody does it, but on the collaboration space on the ham community, I've offered a space for somebody to say, hey, I think I could help with N1MM or DXKeeper and so on. And I kicked that off for saying I think I could help with those too. So, I mean, you've been to my house to help me, so sure, Right?
In my experience, you don't have to do this whole page all at once. You can just start out with DXKeeper and you just fill in the field, and it's like writing a paper log, like it were. And then later, when you're feeling pretty good about that, then you can say, gee, I'd like to dump all this in the logbook of the world, and then you can do that, and you can kind of build on this concept.
Okay, we didn't get you the mic, Leon, so let me just summarize quickly. Leon's suggestion, which I think is a good one, is, if you start with something like DXKeeper, install it, just turn on the log, type the stuff in and get that under control, and then think about the interfaces. What's the next thing most important? Maybe it's Logbook of the World integration. Tackle that. and build from there. Okay, thanks everybody.
All right. I could probably do this the rest of the night, but moving right along here.